This is Anna reporting for the Cleveland Stater on the new Shorelight partnership. And to start us off, just for the record, could you guys each say your titles and where you guys work and how you came to CSU?
Sure. Nigamant Sridhar. I'm the Dean of the Graduate School. I've been here 15 years. I also have a faculty appointment in computer science.
Ali Sultan Shahi, I'm the director of the Center for International Services and Programs. I've been here for less than a year, 9 months, I think.
Okay, so that's really interesting. So bringing Shorelight into the school wasn't a split-second decision. This is a decision that President Sands, as well as the Center for International Services and Programs, have been working on since last summer.
As he's been thinking about his strategic directions and strategic priorities, one of the key pillars is for CSU to be a more global institution that is both inviting and inclusive of varieties of students, including international students. So this is his leadership to say that we should look for a partnership of this sort, right? Right from the beginning, I think the first meeting that we had was in the summer last year.
Yeah.
You were in that. I wasn't even in that meeting, but you were, right?
The summer one, early summer, so
Right.
like early fall actually.
That's right.
Yeah, I was in that meeting.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we've been, involving the international office right from the beginning. Yeah.
I would say that there are about 20 to 30 individuals on campus who have been involved with the process overall
Right.
for the past 8 months.
Yeah. I think the very first meeting that discussed this particular partnership was in, I want to say, late July, early August. And since then there have been I think 7 or 8 different visits by our partners from Shorelight to campus, and then we visited their offices once, and then we also did another trip to another university to see what their partnership looks like.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's really great.
Yeah.
So, in your guys' from working with these students directly, how do you guys think that this is going to affect the students? Like, how is it going to improve upon what we already have?
So I'll take that one with your permission.
Yeah,
So
please.
I think so. I've worked with other entities. I've been in the field of international education for 19 years. So I've heard of other companies that do similar things. So they help with recruitment, but they also help with onboarding and helping students with a proper adjustment to the new culture.
Right.
There's a whole process. There's a whole team. We're talking about hundreds of people who are qualified, who are able to bring in a team of experts to campus to help the campus and help the students go through that transition period that Dean Sridhar and I have experienced as he as an international student many years ago, me as an immigrant. It's a process that takes a long time, right? It takes at least a year. And for some of the students, certain topics are quicker, so they come around and they have a better understanding of how to navigate campus much faster than possibly another international student. But at the very least, this kind of levels the field and helps the students with a proper infrastructure.
So I'll give you
Yeah.
my own personal perspective, right? So 1998 fall is when I first came to the United States to go to graduate school, right? I went to Ohio State, and coming to the United States as an international student is can be a frightful experience, right? I mean, you're leaving everything that you know about your life, your culture, your family, and you're going away to a different country altogether, right? I mean, you show up here with 2 suitcases full of stuff, and that's it, right? And I have to be upfront in that I had I got lucky in having a really nice social structure when I landed, right? I mean, there were a few Indian graduate students. I came from India. There were a few Indian graduate students that immediately helped and took me under their wing. Plus, when I started my degree program in my lab, there were a couple students, American students, that were incredibly helpful in me learning about what it feels like to live in the U.S. and just assimilating better, right? I mean, understanding how to live and what kinds of things, right? So, but that's I use the word lucky in a very intentional way because that experience is not uniform across all students, right? I mean, not every international student that arrives here has that kind of an infrastructure to go to. What we're building with Shorelight on this campus is that infrastructure that so that every single international student that arrives here has that uniform experience, right? I mean, all the way from being able to be picked up from the airport, where do they go, how do they look for a place to live, all of that stuff, right? So that's really the focus of this particular partnership and this company. Then and like Ali just said, there's a few different companies that do this sort of thing, but from our due diligence and our research from the Cleveland State side, Shorelight Education is what we've seen as the premier in terms of providing that kind of experience, right? And they have experience doing this on 17 other college campuses in the United States. We're their 18th partner, and the surveys that they do of their students and the people they work with are all extremely good.
Okay.
And we met with a few of their students when we visited Auburn, and the students had a better sense of campus and felt that the sense of belonging was more present for those students than students who don't go through that program.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, and we spent about a little over an hour talking to about a dozen different students from I think 6 or 7 different countries, undergraduate and graduate. Yeah.
Okay, that's fantastic. So when I was talking to Rob Spademan about this a little sometime last week, he mentioned that another huge part of the Shorelight program that they are looking into is the employment after college, because that is something that I guess Cleveland State University didn't have before, was a partnership to help these students go from schooling to getting a job. So how could you guys explain a little bit more in depth about how that process is going to work and about what, if anything, we had here before?
Okay, so let me take that, and then so there are actually 2 aspects to it, and I'll talk about one, and then Ali will talk about the other. The first aspect is preparing these students to be ready for a job when they leave campus, right? So so it's not true that we've not been doing that, right? We have, but it's a very lightly resourced operation, right? I mean, we have a career services operation, which does in fact work with a variety of different students. Now, when we're talking about an international student who, again, comes from a completely different culture, has a different kind of education, and spends 18 months on our campus getting a master's degree, and 24 months getting the master's degree, but about 18 months in, they're ready to be out there looking for a job, right? So that's the amount of time that they have to essentially catch up and prep for what it means to be in the workplace, right? And again, the services that we provide through our career services operation is uniform across all of our students, right? But then some of these students, have slightly different requirements and needs than somebody that went through an undergraduate education in the United States and then gets a graduate degree, right? So there's that inequity sometimes that shows up, right? Again, with this program, with what we're calling Graduate Global, the idea is to integrate career training and career development along with their academic program as well, right? So while the students are taking courses towards their master's degree, they're also getting career prep that is specifically targeted at this population, at the population of international students, right? So that by the time they graduate, that parity gap has been neutralized, or at least if not all the way neutralized, at least closed, pretty close to being done, right? So that's the one aspect of it, right? The second aspect, and I'll start this off and then Ali will finish this, is international students come here on an F1 student visa, and the student visa includes as part of it and what's called an optional practical training, right? So this is what allows them to, and this is what I did when I graduated with my graduate degree, allows a student to use up to a year and perhaps longer, and I'll let Ali talk about that. Perhaps longer depending on the field of study, to go get employment and work with an employer, during which time either they can get enough training and then go back to their home country, or perhaps look for an immigrant visa or a path towards towards immigration, right? So do you want to talk about the STEM OPT section a little bit?
Yeah. So and one thing I would add before that is that anything, all the aspects of the immigration piece. So our office serves as a steward for as a buffer between Homeland Security and the student status. So we help the students maintain their status, and we report certain things that are required by federal law to Homeland Security on a daily basis. The international students are aware of that. They signed a contract before coming to the U.S. So the OPT, as the intruder mentioned, and the STEM OPT are processes that are done through our office and have been for many years.
When the Shorelight partnership was announced, the school was very forward with the fact that it was to help increase international enrollment, which brings the question, was international enrollment not doing well? It changed from previous years. Like, how has our international student enrollment been doing in the last, let's say, 4 years?
It's been going down.
It's been going down.
Right.
Yeah.
We've seen significant decreases in international enrollment, right? And that's so there are really I want to say two different impetus points for this partnership, right? One is a recognition that if we want to be competitive as a university, to be appealing to students from all across the world to come to Cleveland State, we need to have a much stronger voice out in the rest of the world,
Right.
in terms of telling people what Cleveland State is about, right? I mean, and we as a university simply don't have the resources to go out and do that, right? And so that's the I want to say that's the sort of the tip of the iceberg piece of the partnership, right? Because Shorelight Education, they have a presence in about 30 different countries around the world, and they have a reach to about 100 different countries from those offices, right? So they have physical presence all across the world to be taking our voice and amplifying that, right? So that's the I want to say 10% tip of the iceberg piece, which goes to our enrollment numbers, right? We want more students, right?
Right,
But then when we bring those more students, we also need to have the infrastructure to actually provide the right kinds of services to those students, right? I mean, it simply doesn't make sense to bring a bunch of students from Brazil and drop them off on campus here and not provide them the kinds of cultural experiences in order for them to actually appreciate and understand what it means to get a United States education, right? So that's what I would see as the iceberg under the water, right? Which is all of the other resources and services that we'll have to provide to students in order for them to actually be part of our campus community.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really good to know. And so in the last 4 years, like I said, how has what we've been, aside from this, so before Shorelight, how did our services that we provide to international students change?
So I can speak a little bit to this. So again, I've been here for 9 months, and so before this and this, we had a one-day orientation, which kind of sounded like a cortisone shot for the students. So it was, I think it was good for the resources we had. But it was decided because of previous leadership that we would want a short orientation to let the students kind of navigate campus in an autonomous way. I come from a different background and philosophy, and I have lived experience, and I know that while we want to promote student agency, it's important for us to also do advocacy for students and then hold hands as needed for a short period of time until the students are confident in they know about resources and they have the confidence of using the resources, and so this orientation is supposed to kind of set that up in a more collaborative way. So it's not just the international office effort, it's the campus partners. Actually, the content comes from campus partners mainly, and community members, right? So the more anchors the students develop, the better experience will be. Their experience will be much better.
Okay.
And the other thing I can share with you later is the stresses that international students go through. I have a PowerPoint that I'm happy to share with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, because that was actually going to be my next question. So, so just to recap, all of this, how new is this? Because when did we stop the one-day orientation and go to a 3-day?
So this is spring of this year.
So fall we had the one-day orientation
Yeah.
still. Okay.
Yeah, I think I was on the job for a month then.
Okay.
So, but we quickly changed it, and it was based on feedback that I got from colleagues. We had a meeting our first week or first month, and the Sridhar talked about some of the issues that he wanted to me to address, and we're working on that still. But this is a step forward, and I've done it at two other institutions, three other institutions actually for the past 19 years,
Okay.
and they have been fairly successful. And again, this will be conjugated with the efforts we're doing with Shorelight.
Right.
So it'll be collaborative.
None of what. So again, just to answer your question, I mean, this is all new. This is all new stuff that the new CISP office has been putting together. The way the Shorelight partnership is engineered, right? I mean, we're right now in the process of assembling committees, from various parts of the university, dealing with academic quality, marketing and enrollment services, and then student services and operations, right? So there's three different buckets under which there's various tasks, and over the next 3 to 6 months, we'll take a deep dive into what we're already doing on this campus, and then what they bring as their best practices,
Right.
and then sort of overlay those things, right? I mean, there's no sense in coming in and saying, well, we're going to just wipe the slate
Yeah.
clean and do something
Absolutely,
new, right?
yeah.
Because each of these different experiences is slightly different for each college campus, right? So even though Shorelight Education has a wide variety of experience in running these kinds of things, right? What they do in Auburn, Alabama, doesn't
Yeah.
immediately translate to Cleveland, Ohio, right?
No.
So that's right. So we're so we would take this thing that Ali's office has been working on, and then say how does it fold into the other services that they've been developing, and how do we bring it together as a unified experience for all of our students, right? So
Okay.
that's the idea, and the same thing will go to talking about how do we do marketing, how do we do advising, how do we do English language training, all of that stuff.
Okay, that's really good to know. Well, thank you so much. I think that's all of my questions that I have about what we currently have in place. I think the only other question that I might have is, how do you, if you had to attribute the cause of our decrease in international student enrollment, what would you attribute it to? Or what would you say are some big factors?
So nationwide, there's a decline in international student population, right?
Yeah.
So, and that has a lot to do with the tone and rhetoric that comes from the federal government, right? And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Ali, but I think from a policy perspective, I mean, most things have basically been the same with respect to the F1 visa and the H1B visa, but then the way immigration law in general is perceived is a sea change from the previous administration,
Yeah.
right? So that causes a lot of anxiety on the part of students abroad saying, should they be coming to the United States, right? So that's a big a contributor to this decline. But again, with our so we were both at a conference last week that Shorelight Education was convening with all of their partners, and one of the statistics that they shared, which was quite quite jarring, was that while the market in general, right, across the United States, there's a decline in the international student population. Among Shorelight partners, there's a sharp increase in international students, right? And again, that that goes to a lot. That goes to the conversations that they're able to have on the ground in those home countries, right, with students in properly communicating what's going on, right? So I was in India last year, along with a few other staff from Cleveland State to run some yield events in India, right? So these were students who had applied to us. We'd already admitted them, and we were talking to them. And when we were out there in those 3 or 4 events that we ran, most of the questions we had from the students were exactly of this nature, right? Which is, will I get a visa, or will I be able to find a job, and things like that, right? And again, there's reality, and then there's perception,
Yeah.
and the perception drives most of the decision of whether to come or not, right? So every single student that we talked to, we were able to communicate the reality, and they're all here on our campus now, right? But again, there's only so many students that we as an institution can talk to. Shorelight has a much larger reach, right? So that's the it's a lot about communication. So while the tone and rhetoric is sort of the problem that we need to address, how we do that is mostly through communication and talking to students.
Okay. It's
Yeah.
One thing I was going to add is that other countries are also recruiting heavily.
Mhm.
So Canada, UK, and Western Europe, Eastern Europe,
Yeah.
Australia are recruiting international students at in a more aggressive way than before. So
Mhm.
that also contributes to the mobility that we're seeing right now.
Right.
Um,
Okay.